The alien's plasma bolt transformed Max into a charred husk right before Russell's eyes, not knowing they had just slain the loyal companion of humanity's deadliest super soldier. Russell Porter, a battle-hardened 35-year-old ex-Special Forces operative, stared in shock as the dying embers of his beloved German shepherd smoldered on the forest floor of Novaria, the remote colony planet he called home. Porter's finely honed instincts took over, and he dove for cover behind a jagged boulder, narrowly evading a barrage of searing plasma rounds that whizzed overhead, splintering tree trunks and igniting dry brush. After 15 years of high-stakes Black Ops missions with the Terran Defense Force, Russell's lightning-quick reflexes, cybernetically enhanced strength and speed, made him a seemingly unstoppable force on the battlefield. But none of that mattered now. Hot tears streamed down Russell's face as he reached out a trembling hand toward Max's unmoving corpse. Then, a cold rage built inside him, an anger he hadn't felt since his last tour hunting down the alien threats that encroached on humanity's hard-won territory. Peering out from his cover, he glimpsed the distinctive scaled armor of Yadaran soldiers, a reptilian species infamous for its brutal expansionism and utter disregard for all other sentient life. If not stopped, they would mercilessly slaughter and enslave every man, woman, and child on the oblivious colony. Commander Gruss, the battle-scarred Yadaran squad leader, motioned his troops forward to confirm the kill. Russell knew he had to act fast, or Novaria would burn. He unslung his high-powered plasma rifle, a grim determination etched onto his features. It was time to show these alien bastards what happened when you fucked with the wrong human. Russell sprinted through the dense forest, his heart pounding in his chest as he made his way back to his secluded cabin. The image of Max's lifeless body burned into his mind, fueling a rage he hadn't felt in years. He burst through the door, not bothering to lock it behind him as he rushed to his weapons cache. With practiced efficiency, Russell donned his old TDF tactical armor, the black nanoceramic plates fitting snugly against his muscular frame. He grabbed his trusty plasma rifle, checking the charge before slinging it over his shoulder. As he reached for his monomolecular combat knife, a glint of light caught his eye. His comms unit was blinking, signaling an incoming video call. Frowning, Russell activated the device, and a holographic image of Admiral Nora Simonson materialized before him. The silver-haired woman's face was etched with concern as she spoke. "Commander Porter, I'm sorry to hear about Max, but we have a situation that requires your immediate attention. The Galactic Council has been monitoring the Yadaran's activities, and we've identified Commander Gruss as a high-priority target. He's responsible for the destruction of several colonies and the deaths of countless civilians." A cold fury settled in Russell's gut. "So what do you need me to do?" Admiral Simonson leaned forward. "We were planning to send a team to neutralize Gruss, but with you already on the ground and your knowledge of the terrain, we think you're the best man for the job. Will you accept the mission?" Russell didn't hesitate. "I'm in. Just point me in the right direction." The Admiral nodded. "I must warn you, the Yadarans are heavily armed and Gruss is a formidable opponent, but I have faith in your abilities." She paused, then added, "A package should be arriving at your location shortly. It contains a prototype cloaking device and a high-yield plasma grenade designed to penetrate Yadaran armor. Use them wisely." As if on cue, a small drone buzzed into the cabin, depositing a sleek black case at Russell's feet. He opened it, revealing the cutting-edge tech nestled inside. Russell looked up at the Admiral's image, resolve hardening his features. "Consider it done." With a final nod, Admiral Simonson's hologram winked out, leaving Russell alone with his thoughts. He strapped the cloaking device to his wrist and pocketed the plasma grenade, his mind already formulating a plan to infiltrate the Yadaran camp. As he stepped out into the cool night air, Russell's hand brushed against Max's old collar, still hanging by the door. A pang of grief mixed with the simmering anger in his chest. He would make the Yadarans pay for what they'd done, not just to Max, but to all the innocent lives they'd destroyed. With a newfound sense of purpose, Russell activated the cloaking device, his form shimmering and vanishing into the darkness. He set out towards the enemy camp, ready to confront the alien threat and honor his fallen companion's memory. The twin moons of Novaria shone down on the Yadaran encampment as Russell crept through the underbrush, his cloaked form blending seamlessly with the shadows. His cybernetically enhanced hearing picked up the guttural laughter of the alien soldiers gathered around the bonfire, their scaly hides reflecting the flickering light. Russell's grip tightened on his plasma rifle as he scanned the camp, searching for any sign of Commander Gruss. The Yadaran leader was conspicuously absent from the revelry, likely sequestered in his command tent, planning the subjugation of the human colony. Russell knew he had to act fast. He reached into his tactical pouch, retrieving a handful of small, disc-shaped devices. With practiced precision, he armed the proximity mines and planted them at strategic points around the perimeter, their matte black surfaces nearly invisible against the dark soil. As he finished his task, a sudden movement caught Russell's eye. A pair of heavily armed Yadaran guards emerged from the shadows, their reptilian eyes scanning the tree line. Russell froze, his breath caught in his throat, as the guards passed mere feet from his position. The cloaking device held, and the Yadarans continued their patrol, unaware of the human operative in their midst. Russell let out a silent sigh of relief and pressed on, his destination clear. The command tent loomed before him, its reinforced walls guarded by a squad of elite Yadaran warriors. Their scaled armor glinted in the moonlight, their plasma rifles held at the ready. Russell knew he couldn't afford a prolonged firefight, not with the entire camp on high alert. He activated the monomolecular blade on his combat knife, the razor-sharp edge humming with barely contained energy. Moving with the speed and grace of a jungle predator, Russell closed the distance to the first guard. The Yadaran never saw him coming. Russell's blade sliced through the alien's armor like it was tissue paper, the monomolecular edge parting flesh and bone with sickening ease. The guard crumpled to the ground, his lifeless body fading into nothingness as the cloaking field enveloped him. One by one, Russell dispatched the remaining guards, their death swift and silent. He slipped into the command tent, his rifle at the ready. Inside, Commander Gruss hunched over a holographic display, his clawed fingers manipulating the glowing map of Novaria. The Yadaran commander was even more imposing in person, his battle-scarred hide a testament to a lifetime of conquest and destruction. Russell deactivated his cloak and pressed the barrel of his plasma rifle against the back of Gruss's head. "It's over, you scaly bastard," he growled, his finger tightening on the trigger. But Gruss was faster than Russell anticipated. The Yadaran commander spun around with blinding speed, his clawed hand knocking the rifle from Russell's grip. The two warriors collided in a flurry of blows, their augmented strength and speed turning the command tent into a whirlwind of destruction. Gruss lashed out with his razor-sharp talons, aiming for Russell's throat. The human operative barely managed to deflect the blow, the alien's claws scoring deep gouges into his armor. Russell retaliated with a devastating punch to Gruss's scaly jaw, the force of the impact sending the Yadaran commander staggering back. But Gruss was far from beaten. The alien warrior launched himself at Russell, his powerful legs propelling him forward like a coiled spring. The two combatants crashed to the ground, their limbs entangled in a deadly embrace. Russell could feel the Yadaran's hot breath on his face, the stench of alien musk filling his nostrils. He drove his knee into Gruss's gut, using the momentary distraction to break free from the commander's grasp. Rolling to his feet, Russell snatched up his fallen plasma rifle and leveled it at Gruss's chest. Russell's finger tightened on the trigger, the plasma rifle humming with barely contained energy. He knew he had to end this now, before Gruss could rally his troops and unleash hell on the unsuspecting colonists. But as he prepared to fire, a sudden explosion rocked the camp, the shockwave nearly knocking him off his feet. The proximity mines had been triggered, and the screams of dying Yadarans filled the night air. Russell knew he had only moments before the entire camp descended on their position. He had to finish this fight and get out, fast. Gruss slammed into Russell with the force of a charging bull, sending him flying through the command tent's reinforced wall. Russell crashed into the center of the Yadaran camp, bits of nanoceramic armor and alien tech scattering around him. The cloaking device on his wrist flickered and died, its delicate circuitry destroyed by the impact. Russell stood exposed amidst a sea of stunned Yadaran soldiers, their reptilian eyes widening in shock and rage. Commander Gruss burst from the ruined tent, his voice booming across the encampment. "Kill the human filth!" Plasma rifles snapped up, their muzzles glowing with deadly energy. Russell's hand flew to his belt, his fingers closing around the remote detonator. He thumbed the activation switch, just as the first plasma bolt scorched the air around him. The proximity mines erupted in a chain of blinding explosions, sending Yadaran bodies and equipment flying. Screams of pain and confusion filled the night. Russell rolled behind a stack of supply crates, plasma rounds sizzling against the metal. He brought his rifle to bear, its targeting reticle flashing red as he lined up a shot. The weapon bucked in his hands, a bolt of superheated plasma punching through a Yadaran's scaly hide. The alien soldier crumpled, his lifeless body sliding to the ground. Russell moved from cover to cover, using the chaos of the explosions to his advantage. He picked off the Yadarans one by one, his augmented reflexes allowing him to dodge incoming fire with uncanny precision. But the enemy's numbers were too great. Russell's armor, already weakened by Gruss's attack, began to fail under the onslaught of plasma bolts. Warning indicators flashed in his HUD, the suit's systems struggling to maintain integrity. Gruss charged through the mayhem, a plasma sword blazing to life in his clawed hand. The blade hummed with barely contained energy, its edges shimmering with a deadly purple glow. Russell's rifle, its power cell drained and its barrel warped by the heat of battle, clattered to the ground. He drew his monomolecular knife from its sheath, the razor-sharp blade gleaming in the firelight. The two warriors collided, their weapons clashing in a shower of sparks. Russell parried Gruss's strikes, his cybernetically enhanced muscles straining against the Yadaran's raw strength. Russell gave ground, his boots sliding on the blood-slick soil. Gruss pressed his advantage, forcing the human operative back towards the edge of a steep cliff. Far below, a raging river churned and foamed, its waters black in the moonlight. Russell's heel hit the edge of the precipice, loose stones tumbling into the abyss. Gruss loomed over him, his plasma sword raised for a killing blow. The Yadaran's eyes gleamed with triumph, his fangs bared in a vicious snarl. In that moment, time seemed to slow. Russell's mind flashed back to Max, to the life they had shared on Novaria. He remembered the promise he had made, the oath to protect the innocent from the horrors of the universe. With a roar of defiance, Russell lunged forward, his knife aimed at Gruss's throat. The two warriors toppled over the cliff's edge, their bodies locked in a deadly embrace as they plummeted towards the raging waters below. Russell felt the ground crumble beneath his feet. Gruss's plasma sword slashed through empty air as Russell twisted his body. Grabbing the Yadaran's outstretched arm, he wrenched it violently to the side. Gruss bellowed in surprise as his own momentum carried him over the cliff's edge. The alien commander plunged into the raging torrent below, his sword extinguished with a hiss. Panting, Russell dragged himself back from the precipice. His muscles burned with fatigue, his armor scorched and dented. He gazed down at the frothing water, watching Gruss's form vanish in the churning rapids. In the valley, the Yadaran camp seethed with activity. Soldiers swarmed like angry insects, plasma rifles glinting as they regrouped for another assault. Russell knew he couldn't hold them off alone, not like this. He fumbled with his wrist computer, fingers leaving smears of blue alien blood on the cracked screen. A few taps sent an encrypted distress beacon lancing into the heavens, aimed at the nearest Galactic Council fleet. Plasma bolts sizzled past his head as Russell dove for cover behind a fallen tree. Bark exploded in a shower of sparks. He blind-fired his rifle over the trunk, buying precious seconds. A thunderous boom split the air, drowning out the aliens' guttural war cries. A sleek black shape descended from the clouds on pillars of blue flame. The Shadowblade dropship's cannons flared, raining plasma upon the Yadaran horde. Aliens scattered, some disintegrating under the onslaught. The dropship settled to the ground in a cyclone of dust and debris. Its ramp slammed open, disgorging a dozen black-clad figures bristling with advanced weaponry. They moved with the lethal grace of predators, cutting down the Yadurans with ruthless precision. Muzzle flashes strobed in the smoke-choked night. Alien screams cut short as the shadow blades worked their grim trade. A figure detached from the chaos, crossing to Russell's position with confident strides. Commander Arya Novak's angular features were stern beneath her battle helmet. "Heard you could use a hand, Porter." She extended a gloved hand, pulling him to his feet. "Damn fine work cornering that Yaduran bastard. Gruss has been a thorn in our side for too long." Russell accepted her aid, wincing as his abused body protested. "Just wish I could have put him down myself." Arya clasped his shoulder. "You did what's important. Gruss is out of play, might even be feeding the fishes. In any case, the colony is safe." She nodded to the Shadowblade medic approaching with a trauma kit. "Get yourself patched up. We'll secure the area. With any luck, we just cut the head off the Yaduran offensive." As the medic tended to his wounds, Russell watched the Shadowblades establish a perimeter around the ruined camp. But his thoughts drifted to Max and the price paid for this victory. Arya was right. The Novaria colony would see another dawn. But Russell's war was far from over. As the medic applied the last of the nanite-infused gel to Russell's wounds, the pain began to subside, replaced by a dull ache and the itching sensation of accelerated healing. Commander Novak stood nearby, her helmet tucked under one arm as she studied a holographic display of the Yaduran-controlled sectors. "You did good out there, Porter," she said, her eyes still fixed on the glowing map. "But I'm afraid the fight is far from over." Russell sat up, wincing as his battered body protested the movement. "What do you mean?" Novak swiped her hand across the display, zooming in on a cluster of red-marked systems. "Novaria was just the beginning. Our intel suggests the Yadurans have a dozen more colonies in their sights, and that's not the worst of it." She tapped a few commands, and the hologram shifted, displaying a schematic of a massive spherical device bristling with unfamiliar technology. "We believe they're developing a new weapon, something capable of wiping out entire planets." Novak's gaze met his, her expression grim. "The Council has authorized the formation of a special task force, a team of the galaxy's best and brightest. I want you on that team, Porter." As they strode through the Shadowblade ship's sleek corridors, Novak briefed him on the mission. "We've tracked the weapon's development to a research facility on Zaxos Prime. It's heavily guarded, but with the right team, we should be able to infiltrate it and destroy the prototype before it can be deployed." The door to the ship's armory slid open, revealing a trio of figures gathered around a table strewn with weapons and gear. Novak nodded to each in turn. "Meet your new teammates, Zoran, our heavy hitter." The massive Kragonian looked up, his cybernetic eye whirring as it focused on Russell. He grunted a greeting, his metal-laced muscles rippling beneath his battle-scarred hide. "Lyra, infiltration specialist." The Aurelian woman smiled, her sapphire skin contrasting sharply with the matte black of her stealth suit. "And Kenji, our resident tech wizard." The wiry human gave a mock salute, his fingers never stopping their dance across the holographic keyboard hovering before him. Russell nodded to each in turn, a sense of purpose settling over him. This was his chance to make a difference, to honor Max's sacrifice by ensuring no more innocent lives were lost to the Yaduran's ambition. As the Shadowblade ship broke orbit, the stars blurring into the swirling vortex of FTL travel, Russell stared out the viewport, his hand unconsciously straying to the battered collar hanging from his belt. "I'll make this right, Max," he whispered, his voice barely audible over the thrum of the ship's engines. "I promise." As the Shadowblade ship punched through Zaxos Prime's corrosive atmosphere, Russell checked the charge on his plasma rifle one last time. The weapon hummed with barely contained energy, its sleek black casing cool against his palm. He glanced around the dimly lit cargo hold, taking in the grim determination etched on the faces of his teammates. Zoran flexed his cybernetic arms, the servos whining as he tested the range of motion. The Kragonian's battle-scarred face was set in a scowl, his single organic eye gleaming with anticipation. Lyra, her lithe form clad in a form-fitting stealth suit, methodically sharpened her monomolecular blades, the edges glinting in the low light. Kenji, his fingers flying over a holographic interface, muttered strings of code under his breath as he probed the Yadaran facility's defenses. The ship shuddered as it settled onto the planet's surface, the cloaking field shimmering as it compensated for the sudden change in pressure. The rear hatch hissed open, revealing a landscape straight out of a nightmare. Twisted metal spires rose from pools of bubbling, noxious sludge, the air thick with the stench of industrial waste. In the distance, the Yadaran research facility loomed, its reinforced walls bristling with sensor arrays and plasma cannons. Russell took point, his augmented senses scanning the terrain for threats. They moved quickly and silently, darting from cover to cover as they navigated the treacherous landscape. A pack of genetically engineered attack beasts, all fangs and rippling muscle, prowled the perimeter. Their handlers barked commands echoing across the wasteland. As they neared the facility, Kenji held up a hand, his eyes narrowing as he studied the readouts scrolling across his visor. "I'm picking up a massive energy signature from the central structure," he said, his voice tight with tension. "Whatever they're working on in there, it's putting out enough power to light up half the planet." Russell nodded grimly. "That must be where they're keeping the weapon. Kenji, can you get us inside?" The hacker's fingers danced across his wrist-mounted interface. "I can disable the security systems, but it'll only buy us a few minutes before they realize something's wrong." "Then we'll have to move fast," Russell said, turning to Lyra. "You're up. Sabotage the power grid and create a diversion. We'll make our way to the central structure and find that weapon." Lyra flashed a predatory grin, her sapphire skin shimmering in the dim light. "Consider it done." As Lyra vanished into the shadows, Russell, Zoran and Kenji pressed forward, hugging the walls of the facility as they searched for an entry point. Suddenly, a deafening explosion rocked the complex, followed by the sound of blaring alarms and shouted commands. The power grid, overloaded by Lyra's carefully placed charges, went dark, plunging the facility into chaos. Russell kicked in a maintenance hatch, the metal groaning as it gave way under his enhanced strength. They plunged into the darkness, their suits' night vision systems casting the corridors in an eerie green glow. Yadaran guards, caught off guard by the sudden blackout, fumbled for their weapons as the team closed in. Zoran let out a bellowing war cry, his cybernetic fists crashing into the nearest guard with bone-shattering force. The alien crumpled, its armor shattered by the Kragonian's raw power. Russell moved in, his monomolecular blades slicing through the air with lethal precision. He danced between the guards, his reflexes and training making him a blur of motion as he dispatched one foe after another. Kenji, his face bathed in the glow of his holographic display, bypassed the final security checkpoint with a triumphant shout. The doors to the central chamber slid open, revealing a cavernous space dominated by a pulsing, spherical energy core. Yadaran scientists and technicians scrambled for cover as the team stormed in, weapons at the ready. Russell's eyes widened as he took in the sight of the massive power source, its surface thrumming with barely contained energy. He knew with a sinking certainty that this was the heart of the Yadaran's new weapon, a device capable of unfathomable destruction. The team exchanged glances, the weight of their discovery hanging heavy in the air. They had found what they came for, but the fight was far from over. The Yadarans would stop at nothing to protect their most prized asset, and Russell knew they would have to act fast if they hoped to prevent the weapon from being unleashed upon the galaxy. Russell locked eyes with Krax, the massive Yadaran warrior's cybernetic implants glinting in the harsh light of the energy core. Krax snarled, his voice a guttural rumble. "You may have bested Commander Gruss, human, but you will not defeat me so easily." Russell shifted into a combat stance, his monomolecular blades humming with deadly potential. "We'll see about that, ugly." They clashed in a whirlwind of steel and sparks, their augmented reflexes and strength pushing them to superhuman levels. Krax's heavy blows shook Russell's bones, but he countered with lightning-fast strikes, his blades scoring deep gouges in the Yadaran's armor. In his peripheral vision, Russell saw Zoran and Kenji moving towards the energy core, explosives in hand. A group of Yadaran scientists emerged from the shadows, wielding strange, pulsing weapons. Zoran charged forward with a roar, his cybernetic arms absorbing the sizzling blasts of energy as he closed the distance. Kenji's fingers danced over his wrist-mounted interface, his brow furrowed in concentration as he hacked into the facility's systems. Russell refocused on Krax, parrying a vicious overhead strike that would have cleaved him in two. He countered with a flurry of slashes, driving the Yadaran back with the sheer ferocity of his assault. Krax's eyes widened in surprise as Russell pressed his advantage, his blades a blur of motion. The Yadaran's defenses began to crumble under the onslaught, his armor sparking and hissing as it absorbed the damage. Zoran grappled with a Yadaran scientist, the alien's weapon clattering to the floor, as the Kragonian warrior snapped its neck with a sickening crunch. He tossed the limp body aside, moving to engage the remaining scientists with a grim determination. Kenji's voice crackled over the comlink, strained but triumphant. "I'm in, downloading the intel now, planting the final charges." Russell and Krax circled each other, their chests heaving with exertion. The Yadaran's armor was pitted and scorched, while Russell's stealth suit bore the marks of close calls and glancing blows. Krax lunged forward with a roar, his cybernetic fist crackling with energy. Russell sidestepped the blow, his blade lashing out in a blinding arc. The monomolecular edge sliced through Krax's armor like paper, the Yadaran's eyes widening in shock as the blade plunged into his chest. Krax staggered back, his hand clutching at the gaping wound. His cybernetic implants flickered and died, his massive frame toppling to the ground with a resounding crash. Russell stood over his fallen foe, his chest heaving with exertion. Zoran and Kenji appeared at his side, their faces grim but determined. "Charges are set," Kenji said, his eyes darting to the pulsing energy core. "We need to move now." Russell nodded, tearing his gaze away from Krax's lifeless form. The team raced towards the exit, the facility shuddering around them as the explosives began to detonate. Alarms blared and energy conduits ruptured, the air filling with the acrid stench of burning circuitry. They burst from the facility just as a massive explosion ripped through the structure, the shockwave sending them tumbling to the ground. Russell rolled to his feet, his eyes widening as he took in the sight of the collapsing research center, the once mighty edifice reduced to a pile of twisted metal and rubble. Russell pulled his monomolecular blade from Krax's chest with a sickening squelch. The Yadaran warrior's lifeless body slumped to the ground. "Kenji, status report," Russell barked. "Charges are set. This place is gonna blow in 5 minutes." Kenji's fingers danced across his wrist computer. Numbers and symbols flashed on the holographic display. "Then let's move." Russell turned to see Zoran clutching a bloody gash on his side, his face contorted in pain. Lyra supported the massive Kragonian, her lithe frame straining under his weight. They sprinted through the crumbling research facility, dodging falling debris and showers of sparks. Yadaran corpses littered the corridors, the walls splashed with dark alien blood. A deep rumble shook the complex. The charges were detonating, setting off a chain reaction of destruction. "Faster," Russell urged, blasting a Yadaran guard who stumbled into their path. The alien's chest exploded in a spray of gore. As they neared the extraction point, a thunderous boom rattled their bones. A hulking shape emerged from the smoke and flames. A Yadaran mech, bristling with weapons, its metal skin scorched and pitted. The mech's cockpit hissed open, revealing a familiar figure. Commander Gruss, his scaly hide crisscrossed with fresh scars, his cybernetic eye glinting with malice. "Leaving so soon, human," Gruss snarled, his voice amplified by the mech's external speakers. The mech's plasma cannons swiveled to target Russell's team. They scattered as searing bolts of energy stitched the ground around them. The air crackled with ozone. Russell dove behind a twisted metal pylon, his mind racing. The mech was too heavily armored, too powerful. They'd never make it to the ship alive. Unless... "Lyra, Kenji, get Zoran to the Shadow Blade. I'll handle Gruss." Russell unclipped a cluster of plasma grenades from his belt. "Russell, you can't. That thing will tear you apart." Lyra's sapphire eyes were wide with fear. "We don't have a choice. Go now." Russell sprinted from cover, zigzagging to avoid the mech's withering fire. He hurled a plasma grenade at the mech's left leg joint. The explosive stuck to the metal with a magnetic clang. The grenade detonated, engulfing the mech's leg in a blinding flash. The limb buckled, throwing off the mech's aim. Russell used the momentary distraction to close the distance. He leaped onto the mech's chassis, his monomolecular blades carving deep furrows into its armor. Groose bellowed in rage, the mech's arms flailing to dislodge him. Groose swiped at Russell with the mech's massive fist. Russell jumped, somersaulting over the blow and landing on the mech's shoulder. He plunged his blades into the joint, severing hydraulic lines and control cables. The mech's arm went limp, hanging uselessly at its side. Gruss roared, his remaining arm smashing into Russell with bone-crushing force. Russell felt ribs crack as he was flung to the ground, his blades skittering away. The mech loomed over him, its plasma cannon glowing with deadly charge. Russell stared into the blazing muzzle, his breath coming in ragged gasps. Then, in the distance, the Shadowblade's engines roared to life. His team was safe. They'd completed the mission. Now he just had to finish this. Russell pulled his last plasma grenade, arming it with a flick of his thumb. Gruss grinned, his fangs glinting. "This is the end, human. You've failed." The mech's cannon pulsed with energy, ready to reduce Russell to ash. Russell slapped the last plasma grenade onto the mech's power core. The explosion ripped through the metal shell, exposing sparking circuitry and ruptured conduits. Gruss howled, the mech bucking and twisting like a maddened beast. Russell clung on, fingers digging into the jagged edges of the torn armor. He plunged his monomolecular blades into the mech's guts, shearing through wires and circuit boards. The mech convulsed, its movements jerky and uncoordinated. Gruss's voice crackled over the external speakers, thick with static and fury. "If I die, human, you die with me." Russell ripped his blades free, every muscle screaming as he vaulted from the mech's back. He hit the ground hard, rolling to absorb the impact. Behind him, the mech detonated. A wave of searing heat washed over him, the shockwave hurling him across the shattered concrete. Shrapnel whizzed past his head, pinging off his battered armor. Russell lay stunned, his ears ringing, his vision blurred. Every breath felt like inhaling broken glass. Slowly, painfully, he pushed himself to his hands and knees. The mech was a twisted heap of burning metal, Gruss's body still entombed in the wreckage. Secondary explosions rippled through the research facility, the flames greedily consuming everything in their path. Russell staggered to his feet, his legs threatening to buckle beneath him. He turned towards the extraction point, each step an agonizing effort of will. The Shadowblade ship descended from the smoke-filled sky, its engines a welcome roar. Russell stumbled up the ramp, collapsing into Zoran's waiting arms. "I got you, brother," the Kragonian rumbled, his voice thick with emotion. "You did it, it's over." But even as the ship soared away from the burning ruins of the facility, Russell knew it was far from over. Max's face swam before his eyes, a reminder of all he had lost, all that had been taken from him. The Yaderans had started this war, but Russell would be the one to finish it. No matter the cost, no matter the sacrifice, he would see the galaxy free from their tyranny. As the stars blurred into the swirling vortex of FTL travel, Russell closed his eyes, his heart heavy but his purpose clear. The war had only just begun, and he would be there on the front lines, fighting for those who couldn't fight for themselves. The name Russell Porter would echo through the ages, a rallying cry for all those who stood against the darkness, a symbol of humanity's indomitable spirit in the face of overwhelming odds. You have reached the end of the story. If you enjoyed this story and want to support us, please leave a like and subscribe to our channel, and for every comment that says 88, I will heart every single one of them. Thank you for your time.